to the degree that you want something is the degree you're afraid of not having.
Yeah.
God, I wish I started when I was younger. I go, well, yeah, but you didn't. So shut the fuck up and let's
Right.
keep going.
Right.
Like, you can't.
Nobody changes until they change their energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life.
Because it's not till then that it's really real. It's like, oh, this is way worse than I thought. It's like, oh yeah, it's way, way worse than you thought.
Yeah.
But luckily, there's more to you than you think.
Jason Havey,
Hey!
the CEO of Onnit.
Wow. That is crazy to hear you say that.
Right?
Yeah. And no turning back now because now it's public.
now it's out there. The world knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations, man.
Thank you so much. It is honestly the most humbling, greatest honor certainly that I've ever had in my life and that I could imagine having.
You know, I can't think of an individual that really deserves it more from the place of heart than you do, you know, and that's one of the reasons why this decision has been really easy for me, is because the thing that I care most about with this company is the heart of it, is what we stand for and like what we represent to not only everybody internally, but to the world at large. And, you know, that's what made this choice really easy, is I chose from my heart. And we've always had that connection from the same outlook on how we want to serve the world, how we want to serve the people within this company, and how we want to serve each other. And that's that kind of synchronicity and compatibility that makes this a very kind of seamless transition, even though it is quite a significant one looking
huge.
from the outside in.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's the reason that people are drawn to Onnit in general. It certainly was the reason I was drawn to you in general, was I lived my life by authenticity, transparency, reciprocity. And I heard you always talking about those exact same things. And now they're really 3 of the 6 core values of this company. And so as I thought about what stays the same and what changes going forward, I get even a little emotional just talking about it, but the company will now for sure continue to run with those core values, not just as core values that you put down on paper and you try to hold to them, but like as this like deep inner truth, not something that you know is true, but something you know as truth. And that's so interwoven in the DNA of the company. And I couldn't be more honored to champion that even before, but certainly going forward.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's one of the beautiful ways that this all came together, is that you actually came to Onnit from like a legitimate calling and a calling from an ayahuasca journey. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing previously. I mean, you had your dream job.
I did.
And then you go do ayahuasca and you're like, shit, I got another job that I need to do.
It was crazy transition. And we did a podcast like 3.5, 4 years ago, and still today people are listening to it. I get people hitting me up on Instagram because of that story. Because it's funny how many people are running a parallel path from some calling that they experienced in some form of a meditative or medicine journey. But I was working as the general manager of the Hilton in Madison, Wisconsin. It was running the nicest hotel in your hometown. Every hotelier's dream, right? Like I'm king of the castle of the nicest hotel in town.
Of the nicest castle in town, to a certain degree.
It was, yeah. The Capitol building of Wisconsin was out my window. I mean, it really was a beautiful thing. And I had worked 16 years to get there. Grinding.
You were shaking Obama's hand when he came to stay at Madison, Wisconsin.
And so you think about it in that context, is just months before this, the president had never stayed overnight in Madison ever, the sitting president. And so here I am in my hotel getting a picture with Obama, and I'm like, I nailed it. Mm-hmm. But then I don't think I told this part of the story before, but just after that, I went to my hotel mentor's retirement party. in Milwaukee. And there was a lot of people that had a lot of love for him. Like, there was 40, 50 people that really knew him for a long time over the years. And we were at the retirement party. Everybody had drinks. We told some funny stories. He literally got a gold watch, and that was it.
Shit, does that mean I have to give you a gold watch?
Probably, yeah.
Damn it!
But I was driving home. It's about an hour drive home from Milwaukee, and I started thinking...
Wait, no, you have to give me a gold watch.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, that's how it works.
All right.
I got it confused.
We're editing that part out of the story. Cut it. But when I was driving home, I was thinking about, he did this for 50 years and or 45 years. And at the end of the day, everybody got checked in and everybody got checked out. But who cares? Like he made a difference to those people in the room, and that was meaningful. And I could tell how deeply that affected him. But the job itself didn't matter all that much.
Right.
And so I had this epiphany that, I might be leading myself down the wrong road. While it's meaningful internally, it wasn't all that meaningful externally. And so I went on this inward journey and started changing all my inputs, stopped watching sports, started listening to podcasts, stopped drinking. I started making all these changes.
I mean, you still watch a few Packers games.
Yeah,
let's be serious. But I think, like,
exceptions.
speaking of like a football analogy, like being a hotelier, like being the GM, you're only really noticed if you fuck up. It's like being the kicker on a football team, right?
Yeah.
Like if you kick the field goal and it goes in, everybody's like, yeah, good job, you did your job, you know?
Yeah.
And which is like, if everything's smooth, no one really notices.
And that's actually the goal.
That's the goal,
Yeah,
right?
it's
But
to
if
fade into the
you
background.
fuck something up, then everybody's like, what's wrong with you? You got
Yeah.
problems, you know?
And in the hotel, there's always somebody happy, sad, crazy, mad, and hurt, right? Like it's always just chaotic like that. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking for different inputs, different things to get in touch with who am I even, just like foundationally, and eventually stumbled on to ayahuasca. And so that's when the story I told previously, I went to Blue Morpho down in Peru, and during, I think it was my third and fourth ceremony, I had very clear visions of things. And one of those, there were really 5 things, and some of them easier than others. One was to sign up for the stem cell donor database on delete blood cancer. One was to jump out of a plane. One was to do stand-up comedy. But one was, I had a very clear vision of me introducing you to Hamilton Souther, who was the shaman in the room that night. And it didn't make any sense because I didn't know you. I had listened to your podcast when I was researching ayahuasca. I had watched the videos. And so I knew you just in that way. And it was so clear to me. I saw both your hands. I was like grabbing your wrists, pulling them together, shake hands. And so when I got home, I feverishly started emailing anything that could possibly be your email. It turns out I was way off, but you know, it was every combination of your name trying to reach out to you. In the process of doing that and find your email, I started following you on social. Yeah. And that led to you making a post that prompted me to reach out to you directly. At that point, you were still handling your own Facebook daily, and we connected, and the rest is history. The crazy thing about it is, about the time we did that last podcast, Hamilton was here, introduced you guys. I saw basically the vision that I had seen, and it was the last one of those 5 things to come true, and all of them came true. I don't know how to explain that. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not super woo-woo.
I think you told 4, because the 4th one was, so it was be the donor, and you did that.
Yep.
Jump out of a plane, you did that.
Yep.
Stand-up comedy, you did that. Introduce me in Hamilton, which you did, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And anybody who's listened to the podcast with Hamilton, I actually re-released it because it was so popular, but that really transformed my outlook on so many aspects of my own life, and just incredibly grateful for that experience. But then what was the 5th? Well,
the 5th one was to remove some negative connections in my life that were there. I was in a relationship that wasn't exactly where it was being accretive to my life at that time, but also hanging on to alcohol, hanging on to some of those other things that were actually at the time, and I remember you actually saying this too during one of the podcasts. You talked, one of the early ones with Rogan, you talked about how a medicine can become a poison. And it was very eye-opening to me that at the time, like I had this urge for something more meaningful in my life, and I was actually using alcohol as a coping mechanism. And while it worked in the short term, it definitely became a poison. So it was that fifth one was releasing that from my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, a lot of us get clear directives when we're in these medicine spaces, and things come through and we have a knowing like, this is what I must do.
Yeah.
But to actually follow through on that is a different thing, and that's the nature of what I've come to know about you, is that when you know something, you go relentlessly until you get that thing done.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's also worked in such a beautiful way, as you've kind of come through this process, and we've worked together on how long now?
5.5 years.
5.5 years. And as we've worked together for 5.5 years, I've seen that. I've seen that dogged determination to follow through, close any loops that need to be closed, follow through with whatever needs to be followed through with. So that's just that other aspect of confidence. But that doesn't come just because all of a sudden, oh, now I'm here and on it, now I got to do that. That comes because it's part of your character. It's something that you've built and forged, like a sword that you've folded and hammered and practiced, that ability to follow your knowing and follow those things that you know and follow through until there's nothing left, no stone left unturned, nothing left to do. And I also know that that's another reason why Onnit's going to be in such good hands.
One of the things that you talk about a lot, and another reason that I was drawn to you initially, is I always had this belief that you didn't really need to be the best at anything. You didn't really need to be the smartest, fastest, strongest. None of that really mattered. What really mattered was two simple things: showing up and starting, just right there, and then having the resiliency to just keep going despite how much resistance is in front of you. You were talking at the time back then, you were talking a lot about Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art, and the resistance that came along with that. And that's one thing that I really admired, is just constantly pushing through that resistance, because even time is funny, right? But if you keep pushing through that resistance, you almost always get to a better place than you started.
I mean, I think you can remove that word almost.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you can. You can remove the word almost. Like, the way through resistance is through resistance. Like, you can't dance around it. You can't avoid it. When you feel the call and you hear the call and you're at the threshold and you're afraid of crossing the threshold, the way to actually get over your fear of crossing the threshold is to take the fucking step. Salto mortale, take the leap. Like, that's the moment where you have to move forward, or the anxiety is just going to build, and your repression, your coping mechanisms, like you say, you're going to have to bludgeon yourself with as much alcohol and distraction and whatever else you need to do to keep you from hearing that calling that's just drawing you forward into the place that you really know, your highest parts of you, your greatest faculties, your highest self, your soul, if you want to use that language. Obviously that vocabulary is charged, but you're pulled by something that's like the indelible, unborn, undying part of yourself that's just pulling you towards something. And the more you resist it, we do have free will. We can resist as long as we want. But the more you resist, the more difficult it's going to be on yourself, and the more difficulty you're going to draw into your life.
Yeah. It's almost, the resistance is really the cardinal north to know that you're going in the right direction. But it's so easy to go the other directions.
It is.
So easy. I guess that's the point. And actually, that's one of the reasons that I think we've been successful here. I think it's the reason that I've personally been successful, because certainly we've gone through some stuff. And it's hard. And I remember several times where I was just like, wow, this is such a rough point that if I wasn't so sure that we were headed in the right direction, I'd tap out. Yeah. But I was always so sure that this company was meant to do special things. And I really mean that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in all these ways, like, we've of course been tested. I mean, when I was running a marketing company. I was helping other companies, but I'd never founded a company and led an organization to this degree. So there was a massive learning curve, and it was really the guiding principles were the only guardrails that we had, and everything else was kind of like, all right, we're going to fucking figure this out, And the guardrails were some of the very same things you mentioned, like creating the best products we could create, living in authenticity and reciprocity, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to be of service, and that's really the only way to run this, because otherwise you're running this house of cards. You're running this shell game where you're constantly moving things around, hoping people don't find out that you're a magician or an illusionist and get onto your tricks. And the stress of that alone would have buried me. I'm prone to anxiety myself. You know what I mean? The stress of living in a way where I was creating this illusory shell game and trying to make money off that, it would have buried me. It wasn't even an option. So I had to live or die by the principles. And, fortunately, I think the universe supports that kind of action. And it's not that there aren't examples of other companies being successful having not followed those principles, but the fall is imminent, and it's just a matter of time, it seems, before those things get exposed.
Yeah. And I think I wasn't with you when the company started, but I had to think there was a lot of that initially where we're still, it's 2010, 11, and you're about to make a stack nootropic and nobody knew that word. Nobody really understood brain health in general. We're just coming off an era of spam emails about grow your penis 2 inches with this pill, right? There's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
And here you're going to come out with something and educate an entire market to the cholinergic effect and acetylcholine generation and neurotransmitters and all those things that go along with what the goal of Alpha Brain was.
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting moment. That was really where I, marked the founding of Onnit, because whatever the hangover supplements I was playing around with, that shit didn't work. And I had to pivot. And, that was that conversation I had with Joe, asking him what supplement he would like the best. And he would I'd like a natural nootropic that really fucking worked.
Yeah.
Something that could enhance my cognitive abilities, but wasn't a drug. And I was like, all right, I'll get to work, go to the research, figure that out. And, ended up having a relationship with a manufacturer that was willing to make some bench samples and figure it out. So we put together the formula based on the ingredient research and the guidance that I could get from all the medical professionals. And we made something, and it was so fucking strong. It's I really wanted it to work, because I told Joe, this is going to work. And Joe's a beast.
Yeah.
So I was like, we got to go. We got to really go all in. And it was so strong that there was no doubt that it worked. But at least half the people who had that very first sample dose were like, holy shit, this is too strong. It was
Their head was ringing.
Yeah, I mean, and the way that acetylcholine works as a neurotransmitter is it's very similar to the nicotinic effects. So for anybody who's had too much nicotine, oh yeah, it feels good for a while, and you feel sharper, you feel clearer. Nicotine is in its own right a nootropic, and there's lots of studies, I even put them in my book, about the performance enhancing effects of nicotine. But there's a rate limiting amount that anybody can take, and
start spinning.
Yeah, in high school, if you're that first time you put that dip in and you try that, you end up in the toilet, regardless, and you're fine, you're okay as soon as your body cycles through it, but you get nauseous, and that's how strong the first Alpha Brain formula was, which was kind of cool, but also all right, well, we got to adjust this from here and make this something that is universally palatable but still efficacious.
Yeah, I still have. It wasn't the very first one, but the
nobody has the very first one, because we got 100 pills.
Yeah,
and I think Joe consumed about 80 of them. Yeah,
but I have taken on the role of a bit of an Onnit historian, so I've tried to gobble up as much of the history as I can, and we're actually putting a display case up right now at the front, but I still have the original Alpha Brain 4-pack, 4 blister pack. And, yeah. And
the yellow and greens?
Yeah, the yellow and greens. And that's when I first took it too. It was, I think...
Is it a coincidence it was Packers colors?
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't think about that. but that's part of the calling. But I remember the time I first tried it, and I tried it just after lunch, and I remember feeling like I was on fire in a good way. But I could tell it worked, and that opened up my eyes, because normally when you take a supplement, you take it and just hope it works, like pop and hope, and move on with the day. But I took this and I felt better, genuinely, and that's no salesmanship. It really just was a killer, and that made me realize, it opened up my eyes to what can be done with supplements in general, with baseline up folks that are just trying to improve in whatever fashion. And
Yeah, I think, what
was one of the first companies to do that.
Yeah, it really was. I think we really were disruptive in that we were creating supplements that people had an idea about supplements. Like, yeah, you take it and you imagine that it's good. You imagine that it's good for you. Somebody says that, yeah, these things are good for you. The vitamins, you don't feel them, but I think Onnit really made its mark because we made stuff that people could feel. We made stuff that actually made a tangible difference, where you knew, unequivocally, that you could feel it. But that didn't exonerate us from a shitload of criticism.
For sure.
When I came out, I was not ready. I'll tell you that. I was not ready. When we launched Alpha Brain, I was not ready for the amount of criticism that came out. It was like every other thing being slung at me. Was a lot of the people who were trying it were like, wow, this is amazing. But then so many people piled on, snake oil salesmen, con artists, blah, 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 people. Yeah, everybody just piling on. This is bullshit. Supplements don't work. Categorical concepts that supplements in general don't work. Yep. And then specific things. I think there was even articles coming out this is everything wrong with supplements, everything wrong with the world. This is it. It's snake oil sale, blah, blah, blah. And that was hard, because I wasn't used to that level of criticism, right? Because it was before social media was big, and I was barely on it at that point anyway, on social media. And I wasn't used to that level of criticism, and that was challenging, but I knew that we had something that really did work. And so we started that clinical trial process, reaching out to the Boston Center for Memory, and knew that we had to validate this, to just quiet all of this fucking noise, with the gold standard of scientific research. And that was probably the biggest moment, I think, that I could think back to.
It was the bravest moment in a lot of ways too, because you see supplement companies doing made-to-order studies all the time, where they're paying. A lot of times they're doing it internally and whatnot, but it's not like a true pharmaceutical-grade double-blind placebo-controlled study that they're going to publish if it's good, bad, or sideways. Yeah. And if that study would have come out and been sideways, or for some reason worse, it could have been a company killer. So it would have been, and that was the thing. That was that moment where I had to push all the chips in. It was either we could either survive and just kind of battle off all of the hate and all the criticism and say, no, just try it, it works, or we push all our chips in and silence the critics. Move. So yeah, reaching out to that Boston Center for Memory, they actually told me beforehand. They're like, listen, no matter what, we're going to publish this, and to show you that, here's the last 11 supplements. All bad, right?
Yeah, the last 11 supplements that we studied, we published the negative results. The result, not negative, but the results that they didn't work.
Yeah,
that there was no statistically significant benefit, period, from these supplements. And these are the 11 studies in a row. And they're like, we don't believe yours is going to work either. So just so you know that. And I was like, got it. I think ours is different. Go for it. Yes. Go for it,
Oh, yeah. Because at the time, I don't know exactly. I got here right before it got published. So it wasn't when you had made that decision.
Well, there was two. So there was two, because the first was the pilot study, and that one was the one that was really, really nerve-wracking, because these studies are wildly expensive. So the pilot study is actually even harder to show statistical significance.
The sample size is so small.
The sample size is so small. So the N was 21 people or something, right? So it was a small sample size, and I remember waiting to get the results from that, because that would be published too, even though it was a pilot study
Yeah.
and a small study, like that was going to get published. And I remember I was getting a massage at the time because I was so stressed. I knew the results were coming. The data was in. The study was unblinded to the doctors.
You were getting a massage because you knew it was coming in that day?
I thought it was coming in that day or the next. I was I believed in Alpha Brain, but of course,
sure.
like with the sample size that small in a
never know.
study, you never know. Maybe we wouldn't reach that, magical p-value,
Yep.
of significance on any of these, classic studies, and maybe some aspect of it or some aberration would have caused something. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I remember I was getting a massage and I had my phone just because our scientific advisor at the time, I knew that he would be the first to get the results from, Dr. Todd Solomon and the whole team that was running it for the Boston Center for Memory. And I knew he would be the first to get the results. And I saw him text. And I saw a text come in, and I was like, I had my face in the little massage
You're
thing.
holding your hand under
I saw
the...
my face,
yeah.
and I had my phone underneath, and it lights up, and it says Jarrett Leach, and I go, oh shit! I was like, I gotta stop this massage, and I go out there, and he says, call me. And I'm like,
Worst text ever.
motherfucker. So I call him. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, good news.
Oh.
And I was like, at that moment, I mean, it's just one of those moments that I'll never, ever forget. Like that moment of feeling this just like wave of relief and validation to know that, holy shit, like we really fucking did it.
Yeah.
And then, that was that kind of key pivotal moment. And then because it was a small sample size and I knew that some people would still criticize that because it wasn't powered enough with enough people, we tripled the sample size for the next study, like 63 participants, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then added even some more tests, and then duplicated the results, improvements in in short-term memory, in executive function, and even after a single dose, we noticed some changes in the way that the brain processed input at different speeds, and the way that the brain worked in a positive way. And that obviously came out a bit later, but that was I think the moment where all of these principles and all of these ideas and all of the methods and everything got validated in such a way that it was just a springboard. And from there it was, 4 or 5 years of just steady, relentless growth, because we started to duplicate those same methods with all of those other formulas. And, we'd already created a lot of the formulas, but then started putting those through testing as well. Total Strength and Performance with Florida State University, Shrimp Tech Sport, started verifying as many of the other supplement combinations as we could. But, people knowing that this isn't just people trying to put out the best stuff based on the best ingredient research. They're actually putting their live formulas, their real shit, up on the market to test, up to scientific rigor to test. And, I think that's part of that, inexorable story of what created this thing that was on it. And that's just one side. That's just the supplement side of this total human optimization kind of behemoth that we've created here.
Well, yeah. And just to put a fine point on that, at that time, Alpha Brain was accounted for more than 50% of the revenue of the company too. Yeah. So, I mean, it really was a huge gamble, but that was the defining moment for even everything that we do now. Is there is a proof of concept for everything we do. When we did get into fitness, when you made another call that this supplement company was going to make chimp face kettlebells, and that launched that whole...
I remember that was not the most popular thing that I brought back. We had a much smaller office. I was like, we're going to make kettlebells, and they're going to be shaped like chimpanzees.
Worst idea ever.
Our chief technical officer looks at me and goes, that is a terrible idea. And I go, heard. We're doing it anyways.
Yeah.
And that became the iconic figure of our company from that kind of fitness performance side.
Not only is chimp kettlebell, but the chimp shirt came out at the same. It started 2 divisions of the company.
Yeah, the apparel and then the fitness.
It did.
And I kind of knew how to swing a kettlebell then, but not really. I think there was
kettlebells aren't like they are now. They're ubiquitous now.
Now they're everywhere, and there's really good education about them. But back then there wasn't. There was a couple
Keith
people.
Weber
Keith Weber, Pavel. Ken Blackburn. There were some people who started to help guide that, but I don't think anything reached near the fruition that it could have until we found John Wolfe, who's now our chief fitness officer, who took the kettlebell, the mace, the clubs, the, everything, the ropes, the bag, all the tools that we have now, and then really like brought that to the level that we're really known for now.
And that is the clinical trial of fitness, right? Is the education system. Is we built education to validate that methodology. People still call it unconventional fitness. Seems like it's the most conventional fitness. Like cavemen didn't bench press, but they did push, pull, drag, and throw offset weight stuff, right? And John being here, along with Shane growing the education side of that, really made us experts on the fitness side as a company. And so I really think it validated in people's mind the supplement side in some cases, because there's a lot more people that work out or feel like they're experts in fitness more than there are experts in supplements. And so when we're putting out good content and education on the fitness side, I think it's an easier leap for people to say, well, it's quality over here. I can believe that it's quality over here.
I remember too, like thinking back to some other, really cool moments. I remember when we were shipping out some of our early Alpha Brain, and on one of the packing slips was AJ Hawk going to Ohio.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I think that's the real AJ Hawk. And
almost has to be, right, with that name.
Well, fuck, it's in Ohio. It's where he's from. Like, so I reached out to the email that was on the order. I was like, hey man, just want to, see, like, are you AJ Hawk? Or they're like, either way, it's cool.
Mark this box.
This
yes.
is Aubrey. Yeah, this is Aubrey, and I just wanted to check in with you. And of course it was. And then we developed a friendship, and that was the first like big athlete.
He was an early adapter.
And that was the first really big athlete. Interesting, he was a packer too. It's very weird.
It's coming around.
It's coming around. It's getting weird. But yeah, that was like a really cool moment. And then since then, I mean, I've been so blessed to just work with and support just literally some of the best athletes in the world, from all of the Chicago Blackhawks, like Jonathan Taves and Duncan Keith, all the champions like TJ and Cody and Tyron Woodley in the UFC, and everybody that we've worked with, Cowboy, of course, and Michelle Watterson,
Demetrius Johnson,
DJ, like all just champion after champion after champion after champion coming through here in every sport and every, and I guess that was part of our founding DNA with Bodie Miller too.
Yep. A lot of gold there too.
A lot of gold. Yeah. Full metal jacket for Bodie.
Yeah.
And that was also like just part of the identity of this, as well as all of these methods, from the supplements to all these crazy training methodologies. Like, this is stuff I was doing with Bodie. This is stuff I was doing with Roger Huerta. This is stuff I was doing with the people that I was close with.
With like, Juan and Primal in your
way
garage.
Back then. And then of course Roger's best friends were Juan and Sean and young Eric Leha.
Thin Leha.
Oh,
non-jacked
young
Leha.
Thin Eric Leha, long before he was Primal Soldier.
Yeah.
Back when I could spar against him and beat him up. And now I think it would probably go the other way pretty heavily.
He's a monster.
So, it was part of our DNA, but to see it proliferate the way that it did, and see people really adapting it and just knowing that they were supporting themselves, was awesome. But that's also, I think, one of the challenges that Onnit has had, is we've had so many big names and so many people come in that people think like, oh, I got to be this huge athlete to be on it. And that's like not the message at all. Like every single person reaching for, being a little bit better in their own life can be on it, is the core of Onnit. Like that's really what the heart of this thing is all about. It's not about serving the elite 0.001% of professional athletes. Yeah, we have those, but like every day in and day out, in the gym or in our customer base, it's just people doing their best.
I think that is the message. When you think about it, the reason that we had so many influencers, and it's one of the craziest parts of the company, is we didn't really ever pay anyone initially anyways. And these were people we were just seeing on Instagram that were using our stuff anyway. So we reached out to them and formed a more formal partnership with them. But there were so many early adapters that were at the absolute pinnacle of what they were doing. And people that are at the pinnacle tend to be early adapters and are always looking for what's next. I think you're seeing the company start to feed into everyday America because it goes from those early adapters to the broader audience. And I think that's what we're seeing more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the direction that this thing is going. There'll always be the athletes who are interested, because of our testing and because of our protocols overall. And our quality and the effectiveness of what we do. But that's not who we're here to serve. We're here to serve everybody, and I think that's a core piece of what I'm offering, and why Onnit is still going to be this inexorable part of my message to the world, because I know that you have to get your body right. Yep. Like, this is our home. Like, we don't get to sell it. We don't get to move.
There's no reset button.
There's no reset button. There is a reset button, but it's a permanent reset button.
Yeah, that's right.
What I mean? And like, we don't get to trade it in. This isn't a lease. This is like, we own this thing for as long. We got to ride it till the wheels come off.
Yep.
And so being able to support people in their physical body is what's going to be the foundation. If you think of that pyramid of optimization, well, it always starts with the body. And then you can have the mind, and then the emotional body, and then the spiritual body, and then your community, and then everything else that comes on top, which are a lot of topics that I love talking about. But that doesn't fucking matter when your body is, and even your financial prosperity. Like, none of that matters when your body is fucked up. Like, think of anybody who's been really wealthy and then got really sick. They'd be like, yep, give all my money if I could be healthy again. Steve Jobs, perfect example of that. Like, the body is the most important thing, and like really supporting that. And of course, the mind-body connection, it's so inexorable that it's even strange to call one mind and call one body, because they so feed each other with the placebo and nocebo, and the way that our attitude affects our hormones, affects our epigenetic regulation, affects everything that's happening. But nonetheless, like, supporting that unit is just essential to actually be able to make the progress towards where we want to be and what we want to do.
That really is being fit to serve. Where I think I am able to see it the most is the more, and it's not even, I don't even want to use the word fit, but just doing some of the right things, just at a base level, you see this mood enhancement. And that mood enhancement is intoxicating on its own and can lead you on that path where you just start doing a couple of the right decisions. And like in your book, you talk about just making a couple small changes early on and how they start to snowball. And I think that's really the message. And honestly, I think that's what everybody is trying to do, is just get a little bit better today than they were yesterday, and create a little bit of momentum and a couple healthy habits. And that typically leads to better mood, which leads you to more optimism in the path that you're taking. It's just really hard when you get into that negative space, because it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy.
And so many things are so close. Like, we're like, maybe I'll go to the gym, maybe I won't. It's not like the spectrum is really far. You're like 48% no, 52% yes, or reverse, and it's like there's a 4% gap between that. So like, if you're in a little bit better mood, have a little bit better energy, if you've slept a little bit better, maybe it tips to the other side. And maybe you go, yes, I will go work out today. And then after you work out, you're like, yes, I do want to make love to my wife or my husband. And after you do that, you're like, yes, I do want to, read to my kids. And yes, I do want to get a good sleep. Like, and I want to eat better. And like, it's this thing that's really interesting that I think people don't give enough credit to, is just how we're really close. And if we just get a little bit of support, it might be enough to create that positive feedback loop that's really going to make dramatic changes in anybody's life.
I think that's one of the things that is very unique about Onnit, is that we do have permissibility to talk with some level of authority on supplementation, nutrition, fitness, and mental and emotional wellness. We have activities in each one of those areas. We have a lot of content in each of those areas. So there's a lot of companies, individuals that can talk about one or two of those, but no one that can talk about all four. And the unique thing that's starting to happen here is that Onnit's doing that as a company, but you're also doing it as an individual, and you're able to do it from a different perspective than what the company is. I'm curious, like, how how you see that juxtaposition between what you're talking about as the founder of Onnit and what you're talking about as Aubrey Marcus, the individual.
You know, the beautiful thing is that while I think, science is ever evolving and there's always different ways that you can, look into something and find some ideas. Like the carnivore diet didn't exist when I wrote Own the Day.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it existed, but it wasn't really talked about, but the keto diet at that point had been talked about, and the benefits of that are still being elucidated by science. So, what I was able to do in writing Own the Day was to just condense all of this wisdom and information with the 330 clinical citations, everything that brought everybody up to speed. And that's like really the foundation. The body is the body. Mm-hmm. And if you get most of the stuff right and clear up a lot of these misconceptions about, dietary fat making you fat. Well, no, that's not true. It's actually the sugar. It's even the sugar that's, contributing to the bad parts of cholesterol and cleaning up all these misconceptions. I felt like with that was kind of like, all right, like I laid the pillar down of like, here's how you take care of the body. Here's how you regulate circadian rhythm. Here's how you rehydrate, making sure that you're covering your electrolytes. Here's how you handle so many of these different factors that for me, it was almost this point like Onnit will continue to do that and continue to beat that drum because it's the most important part. You cannot ignore the base of the pyramid.
Right.
But I contributed the majority of my genius to to basically putting together all of this information into a single binder, a book, and also perfused through the whole company as well, and everything that we talk about on an Academy blog and all of the information that we put out. But I've contributed the majority of my genius to that category. And so the only place for me to continue to move is to continue to move on and like move on to the mind and consciousness and spirituality and love and relationship and, tribe and community and these other things. That's where I still have more to give, and while I'm still going to be beating this same drum, and it's because it's important for me to beat this for myself. Like I'm not going to stop being on it myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop talking about being on it because it's the base. You can't ignore the base and move on and be like, and now I move to the library to study the mind. Like I have to keep doing the same things. But for me, it's the progression of like where I can offer my gift, and actually serve my medicine. It has to evolve. And so it's another reason why this decision was, pretty easy for me is because, while I'm still going to be a part of this forever because I have a body,
Sure.
And as long as I have a body, that body's going to be on it, but that's not where I have the most to contribute anymore. We have such a great team and so many different doctors and advisors and people who are supporting this, that I don't need to be on the forefront, and we're bringing in people who are coming to us. If we want to talk about the carnivore diet, we got the carnivore doctors, mm-hmm. Saladino or whoever we want to talk about that. Even if when new things come up, we can explore it with that kind of impartial, unbiased perspective of like, all right, what's the best shit? And I think that's another part of our identity that I think is important. We're not dogmatic.
Exactly.
We're not saying like kettlebells only, like fuck your barbells, like no, we do both. Barbell class is one of the most popular classes in the Onnit gym. And it's not like supplements only, your food doesn't matter, or like food only, supplements doesn't matter, like your mindset doesn't matter. It's about this. It's like, no, it's like it all matters and it's all fluid and we have to just approach it all.
It's weird. Every fad feels the need to go to war with everything, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, this is the way. This is the way. Vegan is the way. This is the way. No, it's all good. Mm-hmm. It's all good depending on the use case, depending on who you are and what you're looking for.
Right.
And like that idea, I think, is also what's, disruptive because everybody tries to say like, this is the only way. Well, no, it's not. This is just one way.
And we're still learning so much. We're
Totally.
still so infantile in our total overall knowledge of even how the body works, much less the mind.
Yeah. And fortunately, we're getting so much better,
quickly.
So much better quickly. And I think a lot of the big issues that have created these big macro problems are being exposed and reversed.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that. But let's talk a little bit more about like the actual business mechanics of this thing, because this was fucking interesting.
Yeah.
How this whole thing worked. Because when we started, it was pretty much like straight up podcasts.
Yeah.
Because podcasts were just blooming
Yeah.
in 2011. Like that was the point
Hit
where
the wave at the perfect time.
and we started podcast advertising. Obviously, Joe Rogan was a partner, so he was talking about it. I had a really rinky-dink tiny podcast that came. That didn't really matter, but we got other podcasts on board, and the returns on podcasts at those early days were unbelievable.
Absurd. Yes.
Absurd.
Yeah.
But like with anything, eventually people catch on.
Yep.
And like you have to adapt and things get tighter and that was an interesting thing because while the first few years of growth were entirely based on picking the right podcasts and convincing them that finding something that they like to talk about, and that was another kind of disruptive piece that we had is like I remember even when working with different people, we would send them a box of stuff, and like Adam Carolla, for example, like the whole message I would always say is just talk about what you like. We sent him a box of everything we had.
He loved the jump rope.
He loved the fucking jump rope.
I knew you were going to say
He loved the fucking jump
He
rope.
loved
We
it.
sent him all our supplements, like all our badass equipment, and we made this really rinky-dink jump rope. It was
Yep.
nice. It was
Yeah,
a
it
good
was
jump
fun.
rope.
It was.
Everything we make is nice.
Yep.
But it had like
But it wasn't
lowest,
Alpha
it had
Brain.
the lowest margins. It was like not. It was not a product. We don't even continue it. We didn't even continue it.
Yeah.
But he's like, I used to be a boxer. I really like the jump rope, and I was like, fuck it, talk about the jump rope. Like whatever you want to talk
As long
about,
as it's real.
as long as it's real. And I think people really resonated with that too.
Yep. Because that's why they resonated with podcasts, is because they were getting to be a fly on the wall for a hang between two people,
Right.
and they loved the authenticity of that format.
And that's the way Joe always was. I mean, I remember in some of the, I put the word swagger on the label of our Total Strength and Performance, and Joe hit me up and just fucking lit me up for that. I was like, okay, man, okay, I get it. But he's like, what are we using that fucking word for? Like, Bob, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I just put it on the label. Like, I don't know. I felt like it gives you like fucking confidence in
swagger.
the gym, swagger. I don't know. But he always had that kind of like, if he felt something, like whatever he felt, and he talked about that publicly too. Like,
Yeah.
he like blasted us for that.
He'll call everybody
He'll
out.
call everybody out.
He
and
called
that-
Team Alpha Male out for
Yeah.
their name too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever it is that he feels, he
not
just
shy.
he just talks about it, and it didn't matter that he was owner of Onnit or whatever. He was going to just say it like it was, and I think that was also the beautiful part of that partnership.
It's great. Yeah. I think we're just at a point where if I feel like hopefully long dead are the days where 6 guys get into a cigar smoke filled room and decide how they're going to make money off of people. And people can see it now because they have so much more access. They can see into the business through the social media, through the people that work there. They call out bullshit a lot quicker. And so you almost have to be authentic while you're being transparent. Otherwise, because people aren't expecting you to necessarily be perfect. They're just expecting you to be real. And that's how trust is built in day-to-day relationships. So it's logical that that's how trust is going to be in the future. You don't just get to do a 30-second commercial explaining why we should trust a brand when people have that much access to and insight to it. I always talk about the Dawn dish soap, right? They always have a commercial where they're wiping oil off a bird like it was their idea, and but at the same time they're like testing chemicals on animals. Like people are going to call you out for that. You're not going to get away with doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's funny. I never really even thought of that, but it is such a fucking
So weird.
Yeah, it is really funny. We were tested too. I mean, I remember probably the biggest test as the CEO, maybe not the biggest, but one of the biggest tests as a CEO that I can remember was when our site got hacked.
Oh yeah.
Our site got hacked, and
What year was that? 2013.
2013, something like that. And we had a data security team, but that was the point where lots of shit was getting hacked. Like Target, I think, got hacked, and they tried to cover it up, and they
Covered
didn't.
it up for like 2 years.
Yeah,
or something.
and then so there's like a lot of these other examples of a lot of sites getting hacked. Like I think data security, and then the people who are really, clever and clever enough and insidious enough to get in there and try and access that data and sell it. They were just better than it's like the weapons were better than the armor at that point. And so we found that out. And I remember again that the same CTO comes in, and I could see he was shook. He was shook because he found it. No customers reported it or anything. Like, he found the security breach, and he was a really fucking smart dude.
Yeah, and he was always kind of a cool hand Luke type guy.
Yeah,
so
always so chill. Never always seemed like it's all good.
Yeah.
But I could see that he was like,
it was a different day.
He was shook. It was a different day, and he let me know that he discovered a security breach, and he didn't know how much data they got access to at that point. And I was like, but they shored it up. No customers were complaining. And he's like, listen, man, I mean, we haven't got a single complaint. There's a good chance that no data was actually, compromised, but there's a chance that it was. And I was like, all right. And I sat about it for a minute, and I was like, all right. And I started immediately drafting the email that was going to announce to our entire customer base that we just got hacked. And at the same time, I'm just dreading the conversation with Rogan that I knew I was going to have to make, like, hey, partner, so our site got hacked and potentially everybody's credit card got compromised. And, while that conversation was uncomfortable, it was necessary. And I knew that was the right move, because if I knew that even if we did cover this up, even if it didn't, I would still have that idea in the back of my mind that we put our customers at risk and we were too cowardly to go tell them the truth of what happened. So we ended up putting out like just a genuine apology to everybody and letting them know what happened. And it ended up causing like one of the biggest rallies of support that I've seen from our customer base, where they'd seen in the marketplace everybody covering up these things until it got so big that it couldn't be covered up. And we came out prior to anybody even being aware and letting them know of the potential risk. And they were like, the majority of everybody was like, some people were like, you guys are fucking idiots. Some people said that.
Yeah.
But the majority was, hey, thank you. Like, I really appreciate that. And I think it like built even more trust with our like core customers.
Well, and at that time, I don't even think the investigation was completely done. As soon as you found out, like you said, the email was going out.
Yeah. And it fucking happened again before we figured out where it came from, because there was actually one of the people, we still outsourced some tech work, and I had to announce that apology. I had to do the whole thing over again. That was even more of a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Is because
like literally a couple days later?
No, like a few months later.
Oh.
Like the same, and then we figured out that this wasn't an attack from an outside. It was somebody who had previously gained access, an overseas developer who had like actually had access from within the system. So it was actually like it was still data security because we weren't working with that contractor anymore.
Right.
But nonetheless, like we did give him credentials at some point.
The phone call was coming from in-house.
Didn't come and clean our credentials. So like then I had to fucking announce it again, and called Joe again, and I was like, no, now I really look like an idiot, But nonetheless, it was the same thing repeated. It was just like, just go fucking do it. Yeah. And then if it would have happened again, thank God it didn't. But like it would have had to be again, and it's like, I mean, at a certain point, it is your responsibility to do absolutely everything you can, and we did, but we just did our best and fucking figured it out and then told the truth, and it worked. Here we are.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about like there not being a playbook, and that's something that there's just not a playbook for. Or, you can see what other people have done, but you just have to make the decision based on the best available information and what you think is right and wrong based on your own value system.
Yeah. What do you think? Let's talk about the mistakes that we've made during this thing.
All right. Yeah, we're going to make this a 6-part podcast.
Yeah. Let's talk about what do you think? Because we've talked about a lot of the good decisions we've made. What do you think are some of the bad decisions that you've made?
Yeah. They're really, joking aside, there have been several that looking back on it, if I could do it all over again, and even looking back on it, like just kind of head scratching. We've talked about this one before, but when times were really good, tricking myself into believing that times are always going to be really good. And anybody that has balanced their own checkbook or run a business knows that that's not how that works. And going too all in on construction projects and the growth of the company is still the thing that I look at as if I could take one thing back, it would be that, because there's still this glaring building over in Suite 300 that remains unfinished that I'm still dealing with here a couple of years later, that at the time we were growing and I was like, we're going to have 40 more people. I got to find desks for everybody. And we started building out this beautiful 10,000 square foot place. And that was an enormous mistake. And then on top, to compound the mistake, I was using a general contractor that ended up screwing us in the end. So like it just made it a double bad. And so I look at that as maybe that's not the most impactful. Maybe that's not even the biggest, but it's the biggest to me because it's the one I should have known better. I saw there was more writing on the wall that I was walking past at the time that I should have seen. And so as you know, we get into a cash crunch either because we're growing or whatever it is, but
overspending
overspending.
It's that whole attitude. And of course, I'm party to all of your mistakes, right? Because I was the acting CEO and you were the COO, or eventually turning into the president. So any mistake you make is also my fault too. So that's
three-legged race.
It's also my fault in that. But you get seduced by this idea that growth is always going to be there, that your net profitability is always going to be there, and things are good. You're cushy. So you just keep hiring people, and someone's like, we need some more people. We're like, sure.
Yeah.
You need some more people. Sure. Oh, we need more desks. Sure. Let's rent this. Let's get this place.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things shift and you've overspent and you've like wasted a lot of your extra resource, and you're like, oh, fuck. And we had those oh fuck moments.
We did.
About 2 years ago was probably the biggest oh fuck moment.
Yeah.
With our cash flow being like, oh shit, we turned this thing unprofitable all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and even back to that construction project at the time, it wasn't just that construction project. Like we bought a food truck, we started an MMA facility, like we were doing all sorts of stuff all at the same time. But 2 years ago, that was the tightest. That was as difficult of a moment I've had professionally, maybe personally in my life, and I've broken my neck, right? So like you can imagine, I remember coming in one day and realizing that the first thing I had to do was go through all of the bills and decide who was getting paid, and that adds a lot of gravity to the moment.
You know what the other part of the story is? We just hired a new CFO.
I didn't know if I was going to. Yeah,
we just hired a new CFO at that point, and he just looks at the situation and just goes, "I'm out."
Yep. He said, "This is not what I want to spend the next couple months doing." So and he quit without notice.
Didn't even give us 2 weeks.
Just walked. Yeah.
Peace.
Yeah. So the day I'm talking about is the day right after that, right? So walk in, no CFO, just bring it. We didn't even have a controller at the time. We just had.
It was you.
It was just me. Yeah, and I knew how to log into the QuickBooks at that time, and that that's tough because again, no playbook. I hadn't been in a situation like this before, and it was dark. And that's like that moment I was talking about where, like, all the writing on the wall at that point said, get out, quit, right? But I still in my head, that truth I was talking about to start the podcast was, I knew it was going to be okay as long as I just kept my fucking head down, kept making the best decisions to the best of my ability, and just get a little closer every day. And I'll tell you, for the first time in my life, I had experienced anxiety as I understand it and as other people explain it. I could feel that bubble up. And then one day, a couple days later, I wasn't even here at work. I was at home. I'm outside walking my dog. And all of a sudden, I start to panic. And I was like, what's going on? I didn't even know why. I'm just walking my dog, no big deal. And I could feel it start to bubble up. And I felt my hand trembling. And I was like, oh no, I can't breathe. Why can't I breathe? And I wasn't rationalizing that I was having a panic attack. And I was having trouble, shortness of breath. And I grabbed the fence near where we were and just went down to a knee, and I just toughed that out. And I was like, whoa, that's not good, right? And I realized like, oh, I'm in a different place right now. And I realized the weight of everything and all the pressure. And I really felt like it was all on me to fix this thing. And there's still a lot of people, but it still I felt the weight of all of it.
Radical ownership.
Yeah.
And you did take ownership in that moment. And, that was something that, we all tried to pull together to figure out.
Lots of people.
But I remember that, the only thing that we could do to kind of create some levity is we called it the cash apocalypse.
It was the cash apocalypse.
We called it the cash apocalypse, and we would laugh about it. And it's like what operators talk about when they're deployed overseas and they're in the shit.
Yep.
Like it's humor that allows you to get through those gnarly situations. And us sitting around our tables talking about cash apocalypse, and that was probably the only relief that any of us had, because I was looking at the potential death of my baby. Here and on at this thing that I love, this thing that was planted a flagpole, that was supporting so many different people, and that our mistakes and our, in some ways hubris, this idea that the good times are always going to be good. It's like, we've had tailwinds for our entire journey. They're going to continue forever. Like, we don't need to take care of the sails, and we don't need to, keep the ship tight. We were running a fucking pleasure barge.
Yes.
And without even really realizing it, it was just like, eh. And
we'll just keep growing out of it.
We'll just keep growing.
That's what it was.
We'll just make more out of it.
Yeah. And, you talk about the humor. That also was one of the more fun times I had too, because you do kind of get into that, like you have to almost have a bit of a don't give a fuck attitude. Otherwise you are going to get crushed by the weight of that. And I remember, Caitlin and I bought a couple of Nerf guns. We just went in and attacked creative, right? Like you just go in and start firing off Nerf things. And like you just start playing around a lot more than you used to. And actually it was the most beneficial experience I've had now. I'm never going to do it again. I promise you that. Yeah. But it was the most beneficial thing, because sometimes that chop down is exactly what you need. You put your hand on the stove, you're like, I'm never touching that thing again.
It almost always is. Like you almost always have to get fucking smashed.
Yeah.
In order to recognize, like, oh shit, I made a big mistake here.
Yep.
And I think that's something, that's an experience that we'll always carry. And now as we've, really are now in the coming through into another really great outlook for where the company is going, right?
Incredible.
Like we're never going to forget Cash Apocalypse.
Yes.
Like it doesn't matter how many years in a row we string together wins. Like Cash Apocalypse is something that we'll never forget, because it was crushing.
I have a folder on my computer that's in the middle of the screen that still says Cash Apocalypse for the files from that we'll never forget that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, thankfully, the company's in a better cash position than we ever have been, right? And we have a lot of great products on the horizon, and we've gotten rid of a lot of the non-accretive products. We've gotten really focused. So a lot of good things have no more jump ropes, most likely.
We might have a speed rope.
Yeah.
But I don't think we got a jump rope.
But yeah, just getting a lot more focus in it, and it's really thanks to that time.
Yeah, no doubt. If I'm going to look back at what I would say my biggest mistake as a CEO would be, I made plenty, but one of the biggest ones was, it's hard to say what necessarily the biggest was, but I would say probably generally knowing that someone was the wrong employee, but feeling bound to them by the leverage that they had, either on their expertise or their knowledge base, and not being aggressive enough in looking for a replacement immediately. And, because we've had some great employees, but we've also had some people that we've known were like fucking up the vibe.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But they had special sets of skills and special sets of knowledge that we felt were irreplaceable. And so we let ourselves be like handcuffed to these people and just watch them kind of wreak havoc in their own cancerous way. And I think we knew we needed to move on, but I think, I spent too long without just putting the hammer down and being like, there's a great line that another entrepreneur told me. It's, better to have a hole than an asshole, right? So like an empty place that you can fill than to have somebody that's just really messing things up. And I think looking back, like whenever we got rid of that person, and there's only been a couple, we've done a pretty good job, but whenever we got rid of that person, everything blossomed.
It did.
Like everything blossomed underneath, and what we thought was irreplaceable was not. Like there was other people's expertise that we could call on, and we
fact,
really
it
never
made other people blossom.
Yeah,
in a lot of
like
cases.
we never really missed a beat when they left, and every time we do that, we're like, should have moved a lot quicker on that one.
You and I have said it multiple times. We were 6 months late on that one.
Yeah, totally.
And some people we've let stick around just because they were really good for the culture. The opposite, but they weren't doing any work.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a less costly mistake.
It is.
It's
like
a
slightly more fun one.
But we love them.
Yeah.
We can go to the volleyball court, and it's so fun to be around them.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like that's also if we're running a tight ship, you got to make those hard decisions.
That is not a tight ship.
And I've had to, I've had people I'm really close with that I've had to personally let go because I've been a part of, not as so much anymore, and certainly not anymore from here, but I was a part of the majority of all of the hiring and firing of every employee, and letting go. I've let go so many friends.
I mean, when you start a company, you almost have to get your friends and then people and in some cases, family, extended family, and that's tough.
Like literally, there's now, we have 100 and what do we have now? How many total employees?
Like 130 full-time, 180 if you include Black Swan.
I have relationships and I feel friendly with everybody, like so many people in the company, but like all my friends are gone. All of them.
Yeah.
Except for Juan.
Yeah.
Except for Juan on the fitness side. Juan and Sean running the gym are they're like literally the last of my friends.
Yeah.
And that have like stayed on and continued on. Now on my personal team, that I'm taking forward, I'm still working with some friends there, but nonetheless, like as far as Onnit is concerned, and that's a hard thing too. That's something that like when I started, it was just like, things happened so fast. It was like every person I knew, I was like, help. And like everybody just helped. And they were all friends. And then like some of them lasted but they all had a termination date because it's very hard to grow. And especially from like when a company's really small, you have a big purview because you're generalist. You have to do so many different things.
Everything.
And now we're in a time of absolute specialists. And it's hard for a generalist to become a specialist.
It's almost impossible in a lot of cases.
And you really have to, it's possible, but very, very difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons why, that transition has been made and necessary.
We've seen it evolve like 3 or 4 times. You can almost segment it out where we did grow. The generalists that were here when I first got here, they were some of the best humans on earth because they literally were willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the company needed at the time. But when I first came in, the biggest hotspot was compliance because we were dealing with Prop 65 and other things that we had to get up to speed and just like any other growing company. And generalists can't cover compliance generally, right? So you have to get a specialist there. And then product development gets more complicated. Labels get more complicated. And it's just, we're dealing with...
Even marketing gets more complicated. I remember there was one day, like some of the longest standing employees, I had to fire 3 of them in a row. And it was our chief marketing officer, our creative director, and our director of apparel. Bang, 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 like all in one day because we didn't want to like stretch this thing out. We knew we had to make a shift. And I think I think I empathically cried with all of them in every one of those meetings.
It was a rough day.
That day fucking sucked.
That day sucked.
That day sucked. But I knew that that's one of the reasons why, and for those entrepreneurs out there, like, do not avoid those painful terminations and let somebody else do those. Like, if you're making the decision, it's like the fucking season 1 of Game of Thrones, with Ned Stark.
Yeah.
Like, if you read the execution, you wield the sword. Like, you go in there and do it, and don't do it from this cold, sociopathic, discompassionate place, because we can all retract ourselves to that state. Like, go in there open and feel what they feel, and that's courage. Mm-hmm. So if they feel emotional and you feel emotional, like, be emotional. Be firm in your boundaries, but like, feel what they feel, and so they know that you feel what they feel. And then that's the way that, like, all of these parties, that's why all those relationships are still on a positive footing, is because they saw me in there and they got to see my heart. And it's the same way that you do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way that it's the only way that it can be done.
It's really over 5.5 years. I've sat in on most of the times that you've terminated somebody, and I can't think of a single time that it went poorly or didn't end with a hug. And
I can think of one time.
Oh, really?
I can think of one time where someone just bolted for the door.
I mean, I just think that's really incredible, though,
Yeah.
because it is the hardest thing that you'll ever have to do. You're taking away somebody's livelihood, and they have to go home. They have rent. They might have family, whatever it is. It's not a decision to be taken lightly. At the same time, it's not a decision to be put off either. And that's what is one of the more difficult things about being a leader, and being able to go into that and be honest on why this is happening is a wonderful trait to have. And when you look at those people that we're talking about, there's a few of them that own their own businesses now, and look back at that.
Crushing it.
That moment had to happen for them too.
Yeah, and it's having faith that they'll land on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can hypothesize this kind of, they're going to be out on the soup kitchen, and you're going to catch them one day, and
Right.
they're going to be all bearded and grizzly, and they'll look at you like, you did this to me.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, that's the person you for sure let go.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
If they can't find other employment, like, they
Then
definitely
made the right choice.
You have to put the health of the organism above the health of the cell.
That's exactly
the health
it.
of the individual, and you have to constantly make that choice, and you have to make that choice with yourself and make that choice everywhere else. The other thing too is you have to celebrate criticism from the internal staff. Like, you have to welcome it, and you have to, like, embrace it, even if you totally disagree with it. And that's not an easy thing to do too. Like, you have to be like, you know what? Thank you for your dissenting opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I really fucking appreciate that. It took a ton of courage, and it's awesome. Now, here's why I completely disagree with you. You know what I mean? But, like, you have to celebrate that.
Oh, you
and,
do.
like, that's the only way that you're going to actually get honest feedback.
You actually have to make it systemically mandatory in a way, because otherwise the person at the top, it doesn't complete the feedback loop. And a lot of times when you're the person at the top of anything, a couple things happen. First, you have to create that feedback loop, because otherwise you're going to always think you're making the right decision, because there's going to be nobody calling you out, which is almost exclusively not true. But then also, you don't get easy decisions anymore. By the time decisions get to you, it's not the choice between a good choice and a bad choice. It's choices that are probably bad short-term versus bad long-term, or it's just bad all the way around. You have to figure out how to change the playing field, either by entering something into it, lengthening it out, all those skills that you have to develop when you make tough decisions for a living. And I think that's the most complicated thing to learn as a leader as you grow, is making the best possible decisions, being confident in what you're doing, and understanding how to go through that process internally.
Yeah, no doubt. I think one of the other things that was really hard for me was knowing that I wasn't fulfilling the role that a CEO should. And I would torture myself about this endlessly, and I would come up with declarations like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go check the books. I'm going to go sit over our advertising director's shoulder and look at all the ads. I'm going to go sit down, and I'm going to look at all the traffic sources. I'm going to go through all the Google Analytics. I'm going to, go in, and I just couldn't quite bring myself to do it. And I tortured myself for a long time with that. Like knowing, like, I know that that's the role, that's what a CEO should do. But I was still being more of the founder, inspirational leader rather than that CEO. Like your role, you got to turn over every rock.
For sure.
Because if there's a rock you don't turn over, there's gonna be some shit under there.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's I think something that you have to be willing to do. And as much as some part of me wanted to do that,
That's not what you were being pulled
that's
towards.
not what I was being pulled towards.
Yeah.
It would have been a force. I would have had to force myself to do it. And I couldn't do it.
And that's what you preach a lot too, is to head towards that calling, whatever that calling is.
Yeah.
You've been heading that way or edging that way for a few years now. I think over the past year, though, I've seen it much more prolifically. And I think part of that is you've just gotten bigger too. You know, there's a lot more people listening. You got on the New York Times bestseller list. Like there's things that have been life-changing that have happened over that period as well. But I've seen you start to get pulled in a different direction. Conversely, I've gotten almost maniacally addicted to turning over rocks. Like that, yeah, I mean, I really enjoy that. I was up until about 1 a.m. last night just digging through Expensify, like looking at people's credit cards, and I'm like, I should probably go to sleep at some point, but I was actually enjoying it. So,
Yeah.
you know, we have to lean into what the calling is and make sure that everybody's sitting on the right place at the bus.
Yeah.
Because where you're now, I think you're freed up to help Onnit the most.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Onnit's in my blood, it's in my DNA, and it's in everything that I've done. And I've given the best of my gifts to Onnit as CEO. And so the roles that I'll be playing now is still in the product development meetings, because that's an area where
Still run that,
I'm still right in the battlefield with everybody who's in the human performance sphere. And I'll never leave that aspect of that. And then founder, chairman, and one of the lead spokespeople for this brand who's out there talking about it, in the truthful way that it is, because there's not a day that goes by that I don't consume something on it or move something on it or do something on it it's me. I created this because I wanted all this stuff, So like the idea that, that's what's preposterous to me about some other founders. Like you'll see other founders of different, nutrition and fitness companies being like, what? You started this? Like, what? Are you taking your stuff? Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, there's a huge disconnect. And I think that's also one of the congruencies that's helped this is it's like, yeah, I'm here.
That is the thing. I mean, that is the thing is that you, and I'm not kissing your ass here. This is like the truth of the matter is the reason that Onnit is where it is because you were ballsy enough to create a company and surround yourself with all the stuff you wanted anyway that you just didn't find someplace else, right? Like you wanted those maces, you wanted to make these products. Just like you were always talking about, like all the pills that were on the paper towel, you wanted to make that easier. So you did that for yourself, the fitness, and then you started getting into foods because you like shakes, and you made this business. You're just the personification of the business. So there's no getting away from it.
And I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I never would, and I think that's why this will be a big announcement publicly when this goes out. But the truth of the matter is it's like, same as usual, just some different agreements, some different, different titles, different way. I'm even subleasing the same fucking office. So
we're renting it from me?
Yeah. I'm subleasing my office from you now. So I'm going to be here in the same spot. So in some ways it's a big transition. In some ways it's also like just actually bringing things into accord with the way they really were, and I think that's an important lesson in life in general. Is just, if things are out of alignment with the way they are, just make the corrective moves to bring them back into alignment to the way they actually are. And I think, and I hope and believe that this is actually going to be something that's going to be really positive. And I really, really do believe that. I think it's going to be something very positive for the company here moving forward, because I think when you get congruent with all the energies and there's nothing that's in discord with like what the title is versus what the role is versus what's happening, I think everything just the energy just is able to move without getting scattered.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you. It is just getting it right with how it was, because for years, the role that I tried to take on here is to get the internal business to match the external message. And whether that was designing the healthcare plan or writing the handbook or all of those things that we did internally, I wanted to hold that mantle, because I was convinced that even internally Onnit could be a change agent for how businesses are run. That same value system being applied to business itself. And that's what I hope to continue to bring in the new role.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Well, look, I want to just give the utmost gratitude to you for answering the call in every way, and just say that I really believe in you. And no matter what, I know this is the right choice. And the fact that it's the right choice is not dependent on what happens from here. It's the right choice because it's the right choice now. And so just know that this is the right choice and you're the right guy. And you once again have the keys to the castle, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to thank you for being brave enough to hire me in the first place, coming from the hotel industry. I'm closer with you than anybody that I haven't dated, and we've grown really tight.
Talk like boyfriends.
Yeah, we've gotten really tight over the years, and like I said to you when we talked about potentially making this switch, that I said. Off the cuff, but now it's become kind of a motto of mine, is I can't say that I will never fail, but I promise you that I'll never fail you. And I'll never fail this company and the people in it and the people that depend on this company's products, content, and voice.
No doubt. And thank you to everybody who's been a part of this journey for so many years now, like over 9 years, and just so much love and gratitude to all of you for supporting us and for being a part of this idea, this feeling that is on it, and really whether you buy stuff or you don't buy stuff, like it's something that you carry in your heart. It's something that doesn't require purchase, no purchase necessary to be on it, truly. Like that's an attitude, and that's an idea. And for all of you who've carried that idea, whether you've bought something ever or not, like thank you to you, and just carry that to your own communities, to your own family, and spread that message with words, or even better, without, like just spread it by being who you are. And thank you so much. So, all right, everybody, we're out.
We're out.
If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. Also, share with any friend that you think might benefit from it. And lastly, go to aubreymarcus.com, sign up for my newsletter diary, and you won't miss a thing.